Welcome to season 13 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we have back with us Coach Marcelo Ferreira, who is freshly returned from a European adventure with several of his junior players and their parents. They went to London and Paris and had an absolutely amazing trip, which, by the way, I had seen him posting about on Instagram and reached out and was like, as soon as you're back on the podcast, I want to hear all about it. So I'm super excited for y'all to get to hear from Marcelo about this amazing adventure that he took with his players from the Windy Hill Athletic Club in Marietta, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. Marcelo and I go way back to my son's college recruiting days, and it's always such a pleasure to speak with him. But I hope y'all enjoy hearing from him, hearing how he is working with his players and their families to help them achieve their goals, and the why behind taking this big trip to Europe and what he was looking to accomplish with that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Coach Marcelo Ferreira. Marcelo, I love having you on the podcast. I'm so excited you're back, and I'm really excited to dig into this trip you just did. But before I give any spoilers away, I wanted to just give you a quick opportunity to give our audience a little bit of your tennis story, how you got started in the sport, and kind of your journey to where you are today, coaching juniors in Atlanta, Georgia.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me again, and it's always a pleasure to have this chat with you. I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can. I started playing tennis. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. It started a lot later than most kids, and I actually got into tennis because I got a job as a ball boy at an academy back home. Didn't really have any desire to play tennis. Back home, you grow up playing soccer. Just really wanted to make a little bit of money, maybe help the family, and be exposed to something new. As a ball boy, I had the opportunity to just learn from different coaches and try to apply some of that knowledge against the wall. Started getting better, competing at an older age. I really just started playing tournaments for the first time when I was 14, almost 15. Became a hitting partner of that academy. And by age 16, I got my coaching certification in Brazil. Started coaching and playing a lot of tournaments. As I kept improving, I was able to play some futures and challengers in Brazil while going to college and working full time. And one day I was playing a challenger in São Paulo, a qualifier, and this agency walked up to me to talk to me about college tennis. Didn't know anything about it, had never left the country, did not speak a word in English. They kind of explained it to me how things were here in the States. Made a decision with my parents to try to just take the leap of faith and come play college. Moved to Milledgeville, Georgia. Played at Georgia College and State University. Fell in love with the country. Fell in love with college tennis big time. Had the opportunity to stick around to get my master's and be a coach at Georgia College. After that, I was able to get the assistant coaching job at Texas Tech. I was with Tech for 7 years, and then moved to Pepperdine for another 6 years as the head coach. Back in 2018, my wife and I made the decision to just pursue different pastures. She's from the South. We just felt like it was a good time to be closer to family. My family's so far away in Brazil. I've been in the States for 22 years. We wanted to try to build a family. Came down and started working with juniors. I've been running the academy here. In 2021, Windy Hill offered me the job to start a junior academy. They didn't have one. And being here since. We now have a little boy, almost 2 years old. So the ultimate goal of leaving college to come close to family and build our own is coming to fruition.
I love that. I love that. And you and I met when my son was going through the recruiting process. You were at Pepperdine at that point. And it's so funny because I remember specifically, I was in Atlanta. I was hitting. I don't even know if I was playing a match or I was hitting. And one of the girls I was hitting with said, "Oh, have you met our new coach over here? He just came. He was a college coach." I'm like, "Oh, who is it?" Like, his name's Marcelo. I think he came from like Pepperdine or somewhere. I'm like, "Oh my God." And we saw each other, and like we
That's
hadn't
the
seen
thing.
each other in several years. It was so funny. Yeah. So that was
I
really
just
fun
think
to run into you.
it's so cool. We know how small the tennis community is, and that's why
Yeah.
it's so important. I feel like to try to build bonds and friendships and never burn bridges, because you always end up running into those people again. There I am as the head coach at Pepperdine, recruiting your boy, and we meet. He ends up going to Boise State. We play against him, and years later, I moved to Atlanta. You're playing at the same club I'm coaching at, and then years later, here we are, doing the podcast together.
Yeah.
So it's just really neat.
Yeah, very cool. Well, the reason I wanted to get you back on is because, of course, I follow you on Instagram, and I saw on Instagram that you were traveling to Europe with a group of your players from the Windy Hill Athletic Club in Marietta, Georgia. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Marcelo's taking this group of kids to Europe." And I reached out to you and I'm like, "When you get back, I want you on the podcast because I want to hear all about this trip." And so here we are. I want to hear all about the trip, Marcelo.
Awesome.
So tell
So you want
me,
me to go ahead and just kind of give you the rundown?
well, yeah. So I wanted, first question is, why did you decide to take this trip in the first place?
The idea of doing the trip, there were so many objectives when I tried to put this together. I feel like the first one was to really bring the academy even closer together, the kids and the parents. Uh, we're always selling this idea. It's all over our t-shirts. We got banners. It's this whole win together mentality. And we know in the tennis world, sometimes it's hard to accomplish, especially in the junior world, because we try to tell the kids, hey, let's really work as a team. Let's really care for one another. It's a little bit easier to accomplish when you go to college. So I felt like exposing kids to that type of opportunity was going to bring them closer together, which really, really did. Watching those kids interact in Europe was completely different from the way they interact here. Kids that sometimes didn't really talk to each other here, they became best friends there. But now that carries over back to Windy Hill. The second one was really to bring the families together. Uh, we have overall, our kids have a very good relationship, but the parents are not present. For the most part, I don't really want them to be present during practices, because it's the moment for us and the coaches to really do our job and develop the kids. But they play such a huge role in the kids' development, but also the success of the academy. The academy exists because these parents trust us to develop their kids. So I wanted them to get to know each other and almost together build this protective shield around our academy. And that was also accomplished. Coming back to the hotel at night and seeing all these parents in the hotel lobby just having drinks together. Parents that up until that moment did not know each other. So that was extremely rewarding. The other objective was to really expose these kids to different challenges, different level of competition, and just a different reality that they don't see in America. I tried to get them to understand that so many times their competition for a spot in college is going to be coming from a different country, another teammate right next to them. So for them to understand what type of work is being done in a different country, what the kids are doing on a daily basis to achieve a certain level. And last but not least is the cultural enrichment, learning about history, just understanding what, the history that we have here, so much of it, especially we went to England, right? So just being able to connect the dots, and all of those things were really, really achieved. The one thing that for me was really important for them to see in Paris and London, I made sure that we practiced and played the challenge matches every single day at a different club, because I wanted them to see the reality of some of these countries versus what they have at Windy Hill, which is such a prestigious, state-of-the-art club. And we went to some nice places in London and Paris, but nothing compared to what they have here. And I wanted them to understand that those clubs are producing a lot of champions, a lot of great tennis players, because it comes down to the drive and commitment that the players themselves have. Mm. If they have that combined with a good staff, is what we offer them here at Windy Hill, plus the facilities, sky is the limit. And I feel like sometimes they do take it for granted because they see it every day. So it was good to expose them to something a little bit different so they could come back with a different mindset.
I love that. How many kids did you take and what was the age range?
Well, I didn't really put any, we had no policies regarding age and level. I just really wanted to give an opportunity for everybody in the academy to be part of it. We took 20 kids. The age range varied from 9 to 19.
Oh, wow.
And level-wise from like a 2.5 UTR to a 10.5. And on top of that, we took 35 parents. So our party was like 55, 56 people.
Wow. And so every kid had at least one parent come along as well. Is that right?
Every kid had at least one parent. That was mandatory. Just for liability issues, Midtown does not want them to chaperone kids. So the parents understood it, but that really wasn't a struggle because they all wanted to be part of it.
I'm sure.
They were not like, oh my gosh, you're forcing me to go to Paris and London. No, they were fine with that. And actually some of them, not only both parents, but siblings tagged along as well.
I love that. So tell me what your itinerary looked like. Y'all flew from Atlanta to London first?
Yeah, we flew from Atlanta to Paris.
Okay.
It spent 4 days, 4 or 5 days in Paris. We trained every morning. That was a time, I took another tennis coach and a fitness coach with us. So while we were training, it was the same structure they would have had here at Windy Hill. We played for 2 hours. They had fitness for 1 hour, and that was free time for the parents to go explore the city by themselves, just the adults. And then we would come back around lunchtime, a little bit of free time for the families to regroup. And around 1:30, we always had a bunch of activities. I hired an agency that sent 2 tour guides with us, and they pretty much took care of everything when it comes to like literally booking activities, booking hotels, booking the buses, which took the load off me and the coaches a lot. So that way we could focus on training the kids and spending time with the parents. The last day in each city, we had a challenge against a local academy. We sort of did like a college format. It was really, really cool. And then we took a train from Paris to London, went under the channel, for the kids. It was like so cool. Oh my gosh, we're underwater. And we went through a very similar schedule of practices in the morning. We actually got to play a challenge match against the former club of one of the coaches that works for me, who happened to be on the trip with us. So that was really special too, for him to see his current academy playing against his former academy. Mm-hmm. And then we had 2 days going to Wimbledon to wrap up the trip.
And what was the Wimbledon experience like for the kids? Did y'all have to queue or did you have tickets already? How did that work?
Most of us were able to get tickets beforehand. We consistently checked the ticket website, and randomly tickets would get dumped back into the website and people were able to actually get them. I would say maybe just 15-20% of the families had to go to the queue at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. But even that alone is actually a pretty cool experience. It sounds like, oh my goodness, I'm standing on that queue for 6 hours, but they'll send me pictures and people are playing spike ball and they're playing cards and they're throwing the football, they're kicking the soccer ball. So they really turn it into an experience. So the parents that did do the queue, they don't regret it.
Yeah.
Some of them actually came back the next day to do it again. But a lot of the families that got tickets for the first day, they got a little bit spoiled because they didn't have to do the queue. So they ended up not wanting to come back the next day to do the queue. So some families only did one day of Wimbledon. A lot of the families did 2 days. I was fortunate enough that Gonzalo Escobar, who played for me at Texas Tech, was playing in a tournament, and he was able to hook me up with credentials.
Okay, we had a little technical glitch there for a second, but Marcelo, take us back to, you were talking about something with credentials and I missed all that.
Yeah, so what I was saying, the families, obviously, some of them got a ticket, some of them had to do the queue, and me and my wife were fortunate enough that Gonzalo Escobar, who played for me at Texas Tech, was in a main draw for doubles. He was able to get us a credential with full access to everything, to the players' lounge and the locker room and practice court. So that was a very, very special experience to not only be there with him, but to just be around all the players. I had already had this experience at the US Open and the French Open, but Wimbledon truly is special. It's different.
So let's talk a little bit about taking these junior players to a slam, specifically Wimbledon, where there's so much tradition. And did you brief them before you went to talk to them about what to expect, what they should be watching for? Or was it more just, I just want to expose you to this amazing tennis opportunity?
Well, there wasn't like an official briefing before just to kind of tell them what to look for, because that's something that we do on a daily basis. We're always preaching to these kids the importance of becoming students of the game and not just watch tennis as a tennis fan. And sometimes that can become quite annoying when it comes to that, because when I'm watching the pros play, I have a hard time just sitting back and relaxing. I'm looking at full work and movement efficiency and decision making. Why did he go there? And the ones that were sitting with me at Wimbledon, they were probably shut the hell up. It's just can we just watch? But they were encouraged beforehand, guys, just really make sure that when you sit and you're watching the best of the best, try to really understand why the decisions are being made. Sometimes don't follow the ball and just watch these players, how they move, how they recover, how they run to the ball. How early do they anticipate? What is their body language when they lose a tough point? What is their body language when they lose a set? Do they play better or worse than when they're leading or when they're behind? So we kind of bring to their attention things that they should be looking for. But at the same time, I also wanted them to be able to just enjoy the experience with their parents. So all the activities that we did leading up to Wimbledon, we're all doing it together. Like whatever we were visiting, whether it was the Notre Dame Cathedral, but for Wimbledon, I told them, we go in, you guys do your thing. You have your parents with you. So that was actually a pretty neat experience, because my wife and I would be walking around, and it's almost like every corner I turned, I would run into a Windy Hill family. So that was really funny and just special.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. What are some of the things that the kids have said to you, because you just got back, that they learned on this trip and that they want to continue doing now that they're back at Windy Hill, now that they're back training at home? Are you changing anything up based on things you saw or learned, or based on things they saw or learned on this trip?
The one thing that I noticed, and hopefully something that truly sticks, we got back last Thursday. So, this week of practice from Monday to today, I did notice from the kids that were on the trip a change in their approach to practice. I think part of it was influenced by the multiple speeches that I gave to them about not taking for granted what they have here. Not only the facilities that they have access to, but the type of coaching. And I use it as an example with them there. We played against this academy in Paris. The kids were great, but their coach sat on a chair off court the entire 4 hours of the challenge. There was no coaching involved. He didn't clap. And I'm not saying that the guy was a bad coach, but I wanted them to understand, look at the difference between the commitment of your coaches at Windy Hill on court pushing you. This is just a friendly challenge, but we want you guys to really represent us well. We want you guys to play well. So please don't take for granted the coaching staff that you guys have around you, the facility. So I have seen a change when it comes to that. I feel like the overall chemistry and the environment within the group has been extremely positive. Just being able to talk to each other in a different way, joking about things that happen on the trip. I don't know if those things are only happening now because it's very recent, but I'm hoping, because again, one of the goals was to bring the academy really, really close together. Because when there is that sense of family, I feel that that will be translated in the way that they practice and the way that they push each other and their professionalism. So those are the two changes that I felt in these first 4 days. As far as changing the way we run things, there was nothing on the trip that caught my attention that would get me to change something here at home.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was at the Nadal Academy in the spring, when I talked to the American kids that were training there, the common thread was the intensity of practices that existed at the academy in Spain versus the intensity of their practices at home. It wasn't that the drills were different. It wasn't that the coaches were saying anything different, but there was an expectation that the second you show up, you are 100% ready to work hard and you don't let up until practice is finished. And then once practice is finished, that's it, you're done. We're not talking tennis anymore. You're free to go about your day. But when you're on court, the expectation is that you are going to be 100% focused, 100% intensity level, and respect the game, respect the coaches, and respect your fellow players enough to give that, while you're on court. I know that's a philosophy that you have for yourself anyway. That's not news to you, but was it news to the kids at all? Did they pick up on anything like that?
Well, I think, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I kind of had to bring it up to their attention just to notice the demeanor and the way that coaches from these other academies were carrying themselves while their players were competing. And I think it got them to just understand, that's just 2 or 3 academies, but I'm seeing a little bit of a trend, a pattern, which is the opposite. Because here's the thing. You just mentioned some of these kids going to academies in Spain or other countries. The way we do things here at Windy Hill, I don't like to compare to other academies because I don't know enough how other academies are doing. But based on what I know and have seen from a handful of places, what really differentiates what we do here, and that's why I feel like we've been successful, is the level of intensity, energy, and the level of accountability that we have with these kids. The standards are very, very high. Nobody is reinventing the wheel. We're not teaching quantum physics, okay? There's a lot of great coaches out there. The problem is a lot of those great coaches are lacking the desire, the energy, the enthusiasm to really get these kids going. So for our kids, for them, it actually catches their attention more, maybe the lack of energy that they might have seen from some of these coaches compared to us, and not the other way around. Like you mentioned, some of the American kids, they go to Europe and they feel like, man, we don't have that energy here. I just got a text message from a fellow coach just 2-3 days ago who works at a different academy, and he just sent me a video and he said, this kills my soul. And is the high performance program being run, and he just recorded for 2 minutes, and all these kids are just flat-footed. Balls are bouncing 2 feet away from them, they're not going for it, and coaches are not holding them accountable. Parents don't really know what's happening. So what are we really doing? Like, we're no more than ball feeders. You're not a tennis coach. You're not a mentor. So for me, the goal of taking these kids there was much more for them to realize how good they have it than how bad they have
it. Fair enough. Fair enough. Do you think this is a trip you're going to continue to do on an annual basis? I mean, that's a lot of work. First of all, you're taking time away from your job, but secondly, you've got to get it organized, and it's exhausting traveling
it.
with kids.
It is a lot of work. And again, for me, when I started the academy, Lisa, it was always about, I keep going back to the win together, to the family. And I know it can sound very cliche at times. Oh, yes, like, I want this to be a family and this and that. I truly, truly mean it. It ends up actually being harder on me when I try to accomplish that, because since I wanted to become a big family and I get really attached to these kids and the families, when they leave the academy for whatever reason, it's hurtful. Versus me just looking at it from a business standpoint. Hey, it is what it is. See you later. But because I wanted to be a very tightly knit group, I always put in the time to do things like that. Our Christmas party, if you came to it one day, it's amazing. I work on it for 3-4 months. It's a big Christmas party. We rent this entertainment area. It's 120 people. There's food, there's awards, there's music, because I want to bring the families together. So this trip was challenging because, again, it's 56 people, is moving parts all over the place. There's safety issues, there's things that Midtown had to approve. But when I look at the success that we had, the goal now is to make it an annual event. There's no doubt that hiring a travel agency that helped us put it together made the trip so much easier and more successful. Ultimately, it was my call when it comes to, we're going to go to this academy, we're going to do these activities, but they're the ones booking it. I used them when I went through with the Pepperdine team. They did a phenomenal job. So I was like, I want to give them the opportunity now to do a trip with almost 60 people and not 15. And they really stepped up. It was phenomenal. We got back on Thursday. Over the weekend, I had families in our trip group asking me, where are we going next year? So the countries have already pretty much been chosen. It's going to be a much more challenging trip, a much more exotic one. And based on the success of this trip, I'm thinking we might have over 70 people for the next one.
Oh, goodness. So y'all went for 2 weeks, is that right, this time?
We went for 11 days.
11 days. And just talking nuts and bolts, I'm assuming the families were responsible for dealing with booking their air travel, or did y'all do that as a group as well?
Through the agency, so
Okay.
they allowed the families to book their own flights if they wanted to. We had a block already booked with British Airways for parents that wanted to fly with the agency. Those are the flights that the coaches went on. Some families wanted to have that freedom to use miles and maybe fly business if they had enough miles for it. So I gave them the freedom to do that. But as far as hotels and all the activities and everything else, everything was done by the agency.
Okay. And they paid a fee per family or per person, I guess, based on how many in the family went. And I'm hoping that built into that was payment for your time and your coach's time as well, right?
So we built that separately. So the agency charged whatever fee was to cover the entire trip. They gave an option of a package with flights and without flights. And then there was a side charge just to really help us, again, my goal wasn't to make money on this trip, was to create an experience. So the only thing that we got from the parents was to help us with our meals, because the cost that the agency put on the parents was only covering the breakfast. So lunch and dinner was out of pocket. And I told the parents, we can't not work for 10 days. And on top of that, you spend money with meals. And the parents were phenomenal. They're like, come on, it's your job.
Right.
So they at least covered that for me, the fitness coach and the other tennis coach.
Good. I mean, and that's something that, I think parents are starting to better understand that you coaches, this is your job. You have a mortgage to pay. You have a family to support. You are doing this, yes, because you love tennis and because you love seeing these kids have success, but also it's how you pay your bills. And, so I think I'm glad to hear that the parents didn't put up any kind of fight and that they were absolutely gracious about covering that cost for you. And I'm guessing that they truly understand that this is your job and, that they've got to help you continue to do it.
I don't say this lightly, the families, I'm very grateful and appreciative of the families that we have within the academy. We had a phenomenal group of families. We really did. And not only they were graceful and understanding, but a lot of families, every opportunity they had, they would pay for dinners or pay for lunches, and allowing maybe that money that they gave us to be saved. So I really have no complaints. They were very appreciative of me putting the trip together. They understand that it does take a lot of time. I was on numerous calls with the agency to work on the details of the trip. And even though the guides were there, I'm the leader of the trip. If something goes south, I'm the one they need to approach. So I feel like there is nothing negative to be said about this trip. I actually feel like the outcome was better than I expected. It really was. And that's why now I'm looking forward to another one. So are the coaches and so are the parents. So we'll see. The goal right now, if as it stands, we're going to Japan and South Korea.
Oh my goodness. That is a huge trip. That's a long flight, even from Atlanta.
I'm already working with the agency, already have a meeting booked with them for the beginning of the week to sort of like work on the ins and outs, find out how much the pricing, because it's going to be a little bit pricier, it's a further away flight and everything else. We need to apply for visas and everything else. So the other one was able to put it together within 7 months, 8 months. So this one is going to need me a year to really work on the details.
So if families that are in the Atlanta area and maybe they're looking to change academies, maybe knowing this trip is coming is going to be the impetus that they, kind of the kick in the pants they need to make that change. How do they get a hold of you and how do they find out about being part of the trip next year?
So they can either reach out to me, or, just give me a call at 818-450-7836. They can reach out by email, Marcelo Ferreira 2310@gmail.com. And I guess you can, the spelling, you can put it on the podcast.
I'll put it all in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay. Or find me on Instagram, which is a lot of the people that come to our academy, they end up coming because they see stuff that I post at Coach Ferreira Tennis. But yeah, this is going to be, this past trip was already unforgettable, but I really look forward to this one. I wasn't even expecting. The parents are the ones voting for these two countries. I had offered Spain and Portugal, and they were like, how about we do something a little bit more exotic and we go to Japan? And I was like, heck yeah, because I've been to Japan and I think this would be a cultural shock to these kids like they've never had before. And again, for me, the goal when these kids leave Windy Hill, I want them to be as mature as I want them to be exposed to the world as much as possible before they go to college. Being a former college coach myself, I remember how immature and unprepared some of these American kids were when they came as a freshman. And one of my goals when I became a junior coach was to try to help these junior kids build a better foundation when it comes to maturity and preparation. So when they go to college, they're not so overwhelmed as a freshman. And doing things like that, I think does help build a solid foundation, because that's what makes the difference between some of these foreigners. College coaches love recruiting these foreigners because they come to you as a freshman so mature, because they've traveled the world playing ITFs, or they had a tough life in their countries and they see it as their way out. So taking these kids outside of the States, it exposes them to different culture, but they see what some of these kids don't have, and they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Marcelo, this is so cool that you've done this. And I hope more junior coaches and academies take a cue from you and start looking at opportunities like this, because we know there's some phenomenal academies around the world, some phenomenal coaches, but what we have here at home is also pretty phenomenal. And I think you're absolutely right to see this as an opportunity to remind the kids that you're working with and the parents that you're working with to appreciate what they've got and to understand that not everybody has the same opportunities, and that being grateful takes you a long way in life. Showing that gratitude will open a lot of doors.
It is super important, and I think my profession sometimes can become very thankless. We just kind of go about our routine, and I understand, especially when you're working with high performance players, parents are paying a good chunk of money for their kids to be successful. But I feel like, unfortunately, and that's not the case for every family, like I said, we're very fortunate, but tennis coaches will a lot of times get the nasty text messages when the kids are not doing well. But kids doing well is an expectation. So it's almost like when the kids do well, there's no credit being given. When the kids don't do well, there's criticism being given. So it's tough sometimes, you feel like, man, do we ever get credit for things? But I'm fortunate that on this end, with the families that we have, we do feel appreciated. We do receive a lot of thanks for what we do for their kids. So a big shout out to the Windy Hill families. And I mean it, because they're great people. And again, if we didn't have these great families, I wouldn't do a trip like that, because I knew it was going to be just a huge opportunity for me to have a headache. For you to take almost 60 people to Europe for 10, 11 days, seeing each other every day, we're tired. Things can go south. Maybe they don't like the hotel. Maybe they don't like the activities. But because I knew we had good people coming with us, I had a lot of peace in my mind that the trip was going to be great. And it was great. And I look forward to the next one.
That's awesome to hear. And just a reminder, to all the families out there, show some gratitude to your coach. Don't just complain. Show gratitude and be thankful for the job that they're doing, because it can be thankless. And I totally get that. And these families are very lucky to have you, Marcelo. And I just in awe of what you've been able to accomplish there. And when I heard about this trip and saw your post on Instagram, I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I was really excited, and I appreciate you taking time out, because I'm sure you're still a little jet lagged, to come and talk to us and share this experience with us. To the coaches that might be watching or listening to this, Marcelo is a font of information. So if you're considering doing something like this with your own academy or your own families, I'm sure he would be more than happy to walk you through the steps of getting it done, right?
For sure. I think, I want everybody to experience the things that we're experiencing. I think there's just so many kids that we can take, right? And I want other junior players to have this opportunity too. We can get very competitive in this arena, especially in Atlanta. You lived here, you know, there's an academy in every corner. So I'm always trying to think outside the box, but I'm always talking to other coaches, and I want these juniors to have the experience that our juniors are having. So if people have questions, feel free to reach out for sure. And I want to use this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for, again, being such a huge ambassador of our sport. You know, like, you probably don't get thanked enough. You definitely don't make a lot of money doing this, but you put in a lot of hours paying attention to what people are doing, to invite them to your podcast. So we appreciate that we have a voice with you and you have the opportunity to share some of the things that we're doing. A big shout out to my staff too, because again, you just said, oh, I'm in awe of what you've been able to accomplish this past 3 years. You can't do it without a great team. You know, like, I'm just one man. I got a great team of coaches, fitness coaches, yogis. The club has given me all the support. And like I said, the parents and the players, again, we can only be here because of the parents trusting us. And being a parent myself now, I have so much respect for our parents and our kids after becoming a father. Because having a child, I'm like, man, these parents drop off their kids with us every day, hoping that we're going to not only make them better players, but make them better people. So I take my job even more seriously after becoming a parent, because I hope that one day I can find somebody that I trust enough to drop off my child and let them take care of them. So a big shout out to the families too. And I mentioned that we use this agency. I don't want to do marketing for them, but a big shout out to Navigo and Brad and Javi and Lindsay, because they were phenomenal putting this trip together. So they do deserve credit, and that's why I wanted to mention their names.
Love it. Love it. Well, Marcelo, always great to chat with you. Great to see you, and keep up the great work and keep us posted on next year's trip. If you need any help getting the word out, I'm here for you. And to my listeners and viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.